And we are live. I think that is actually becoming my new catchphrase, which is terrible because I feel like I'm stealing it for something. But we're live, and I am thrilled to actually get this guest on this evening because this has been probably months in the making. I have been emailing Ward for months. I've respected Ward's art for a very long time. He's been a very much an impactful artist that very much says things that are very standful, and he has a voice and he uses it, and it's meaningful to this time, and it means something for have people have a voice and to use it. And Ward's one of them. Ward is very much involved with one of my favorite bands of all time, Pearl Jam, and has done many pieces. He's been around for 25 plus years, and he is what many people claim to be their role model and someone they inspire to be. And tonight, I have the pleasure of sitting down with Ward Sutton. Ward, how are you doing this fine Wednesday evening?
I'm great, and thank you for having me on your show. I'm honored to be here. So it's great to
The
meet you too.
Dude, the honor is absolutely all mine. It's when I first reach out to you, like a lot of the artists that I reach out to, it typically does with like my collection, like me going through my collection, seeing artists and trying to put like a face to that artist and like seeing how they like dive into their work. And with you, Ward, you've done a lot of Pearl Jam prints in the past, and I didn't realize at the time, you were the one doing them. So I reached out to you about doing it. It was right probably in the peak of the pandemic, and you're like, "Hey, not the right time, but we can do something later." And I've been just counting
Well,
down the
well,
days to do it.
well, actually, it's a funny story the way it happened because you contacted me before the pandemic hit. It was maybe like a month before,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, "Would you like to join me on this show?" And I thought this would be great because I had just been asked to, or maybe I had just finished it, but I'd just been asked to design my first new poster for the band Pearl Jam since um, really the first proper one of my own since '98. And
Wow.
so it had been a long time coming. I was really excited about it. And I thought, oh, well, this being on your show would be it would be perfect to do it right after the poster came out. And I think the concert was supposed to be originally like April 4th or something. And so I was like, let me just contact you in a few weeks, but I
Yeah.
didn't want to tell you why because I
Sure,
wasn't
sure.
supposed to tell anybody about the poster. I had to keep it quiet. So I was waiting, and then all of a sudden, the whole world shut down, and then everything changed. So now
Yeah.
here we are, a year later.
And it's crazy because it's 22 years separated from the last Pearl Jam print you did to the most recent one. And hopefully, when the everything is back in order and we go to shows, that you'll do one of them for the upcoming shows. We'll have to just wait and see how that goes.
Yeah,
But
I'd love to do more.
before we dig into your most recent work, the one thing, like I said, I really respect about you is that a lot of your pieces are politically driven. That you post drastically. Your Gen X one you put out recently was I love that. That spoke so much to my heart. Like how the generations are changing and talking. It was great. But I love how that
Which one
you
was that one?
the Gen X one you did.
Oh yeah, yeah, Gen X Men, the middle-aged superheroes.
Yes, love
Oh,
that.
thanks. I did that for the New Yorker. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, it was amazing. What I love is you're using your voice and your art to make a statement for pieces that for a time that those statements need to be made, and you're not scared to say it. And I love that. And I respect that so much about you.
Thank you.
So let's go right back to Little Ward. What made you want to be an artist?
Well, I think I can look back now. I didn't realize it at the time, obviously, when I was so little. But my personality is I'm somewhat of an introvert, and when I look back, I can realize what I really love to do is just hang out and draw. I just really loved doing that. And I loved comic books. And I started out by collecting comic books like Spider-Man and X-Men and stuff like that. And I would just sit at home and try to, look at the pictures and try to draw them myself. And then I started making my own comic books. Um, but also to go even further back, when I was in first grade, I won an art contest at Saks Fifth Avenue. My family was living in New Jersey at the time, And so we went in to see the show at the store, and my work was framed on the wall, and that that made a big impression on me. Like, wow, this is kind of exciting. And then when I was then my family moved to Minnesota, and uh, again, I would just draw all the time, and I would kind of sit in the back of the class, and the teacher basically exempted me and a friend from regular schoolwork and just let us make comic books. And then she even laminated them to make sure that they wouldn't get ruined. And that was pretty cool. Like I
Yeah.
could, she was really validating what I was doing, and giving me a lot of support. And another teacher, I can't remember why I did this, if I just did it on my own or whatever, but I did a caricature of then President Jimmy Carter. So I'm dating myself now. But the but the teacher took it and put it up in the display case in school, and everybody saw it and started giving me feedback. And all these little things just had a lot of impact on me. There was a parent of another friend of mine in school who did some work for the local community paper, and she saw my work and she said, "Why don't you do cartoons? Have you ever done like editorial cartoons? You can draw. Why don't you try that?" And so I did a few, and she got them published in the paper. And then I started, even just in grade school and junior high, I started doing cartoons for the local community paper. So I was fortunate to have a lot of support and opportunities, I guess.
Well, that's great. I mean, especially that's like teachers are the unsung heroes of like youth because they really can impact people in ways of putting them in the right direction towards different things. And to have that support, when teachers can recognize something and be like, "Listen, this is you're talented at this. This is going to be something you can do for the future." It's absolutely amazing. Now, did you collect comics growing up? Like you said, you collected Spider-Man and stuff, but were you like hardcore Marvel, or was it like did you dabble in DC a little bit?
Yeah, I kind of collected anything, but mostly I would say more Marvel than DC, but I certainly have, and I still have them all here in boxes, uh, and mostly Marvels, but I've got a lot of DCs too.
Yeah, I've DC's got like a clip in my heart, and it's kind of like I'm like the I just keep going back. I don't know. I've grew up on DC, and it's like I'm waiting for them to finally get it together. I thought they got it together with the new Justice League movie until Warner Brothers yesterday is like, we're not going to continue with the success of this. We're like,
Oh,
yeah,
I didn't even
heartbroken.
hear that. Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah,
Um,
and it was so good too.
I would say that I wasn't so strongly partisan between Marvel and DC or even other publishers, but more I just followed the artists. If it was an artist I liked, no matter what comic it was, I would want to get it, and that kind of drove me.
That's all. Now, and you did you have illust now? I know your setup and how you drew and stuff. So with comics, they were a big inspiration for you to draw, get you going, and you go through this school. You're going through school. Your teachers are kind of putting you in the right direction, continue growing. Did you go through college to become an artist, or did you go right into the workforce?
Yeah, I went to college actually as a double major in art and math. The math crashed and burned by sophomore year. And so I was a studio art major. And I also worked on the student newspaper, probably spent as much time on that as I did on any of my classes. So I started a comic strip, I did editorial cartoons. Um, I went to St. Olaf College in Minnesota, and one of my editorial cartoons won a Page One Minnesota Page One award. So
Wow,
as a student entry, and so that was pretty exciting. But I was just sort of dabbling in all kinds of art, painting, drawing, animation. I studied with this amazing professor who had worked on the Flintstones and Rocky and Bullwinkle and Disney, a lot of classic animation, and so that was something I was interested in too. And when I came out of college, I kind of just started throwing stuff at the wall, trying anything. I'd have exhibitions of paintings in coffee shops, or um, I loved music, so I'd go to concerts and I'd ask the band if I could do some artwork for them, maybe. And I tried to find venues to draw cartoons and get them published.
Now, one of the things that we had spoke about earlier too was that your artwork is extremely, there's a lot of political side of things, and you're using that pen for a voice. When earlier in your career did you realize that you can use your art to make statements?
I think it really struck me when I was in high school because I was I worked on the student newspaper in high school, and I started doing cartoons about the principal, and and nobody stopped me, and the students loved it, and I could kind of make commentary about things the school was doing, and it did give me this feeling of power, like, wow, this is pretty cool. I mean, it's not like I was uh, being extremely, this wasn't an extremely harsh situation, but I was getting to comment on things the school was doing, and then I just continued that in college. I would say it was later into my when I was starting out as a professional. I started working at a weekly newspaper called the Twin Cities Reader in Minneapolis. It was a competitor to the City Pages, which recently folded. The Twin Cities Reader ended in 1997, but I did a strip for them for 7 years, and early on I kind of realized my that power was something. I mean, to go back on the Spider-Man cliche, with great power comes great responsibility, because I just felt like this kid who was like not really, I didn't, I felt like the little guy, the David versus Goliath. So I'd pick targets and I'd shoot my slingshot with my cartoons, and I didn't even think anybody would notice. But then there might be a few times when suddenly I realized, I might hear from the person I did the cartoon about, and I'd be sort of shocked, like, oh, they actually saw it, and I started to realize I have to use this wisely. I'm very fortunate to have a platform, but I can't take advantage of it.
Sure. Now, you had mentioned too that you had went in college and in high school, you started seeking out venues and concerts and bands. What was the first band or venue that you worked with to create a print for?
So, well, I did a two-pronged answer to that. When I first started, I was in Minneapolis, and there was a band that I loved named Something Fierce. They were kind of a poppy uh, indie band, and I would go see them at the 400 bar in Minneapolis, and I was sort of like a regular. I'd go see them all the time, and so I first got asked them, I'd love to do some artwork for you, and they would. And back then, this is obviously way before the internet and everything. This was in like 1990 and 1991, and they did they had a mailing list. So every time they were going to have new shows, they sent out a postcard. So they had me design a couple postcards for them. And so that was really my first op- well, first opportunity doing something like that. I also designed a T-shirt for a friend's band in college called the Bastards of Elvis, and that was fun to do. You
Okay.
can probably imagine the imagery. That was fun. But then I would say my concert posters proper started when I was in Seattle, and I moved to Seattle. I graduated college. I lived in Minneapolis, and then um, I'll be candid. The woman I was in love with was living in Seattle, and so I decided to move there. And I just happened to walk into what was going to be this explosion of youth culture. I got there like a month or two before Nirvana's Nevermind album came out, and shortly before Pearl Jam's 10 album came out. I was working at a record store, kind of a little indie record store, that a number of guys and bands would come in and order records or come peruse. It was like all used records and stuff. And then I started doing some work for the Rocket, which was the local monthly music magazine that uh, it followed like the whole music scene and everything that was going on there. And then concurrently with the whole music scene that was happening in Seattle, there was this alternative comic scene through the publisher Fantagraphics that was emerging. In the same way bands were going to Seattle to try to get a label, sign a label deal, cartoonists were going there trying to get published.
Hmm.
And a lot of designers were drawn to the area too, like poster designers and stuff like that. So there's this huge swelling of creative talent. And I have to admit, I happened into it by accident. I mean, I was excited about moving to Seattle, but I didn't realize all this was just coming to the fore when I got there. Um, and so I think through the Rocket, I met somebody and he asked me to design a flyer for a concert at the Rebar in Seattle, this kind of small bar. And so I did that. I did a number of like 11 by 17 Xerox posters that would be put up on telephone poles. And those were my first posters. Um, but then, uh, funny enough, an overzealous woman decided to run for city council in Seattle on the platform that she was going to clean up the town from these eyesore posters that were dangerous on the
Oh,
telephone poles.
dangerous.
They were danger to the electric workers who had to climb the telephone poles. And so she won, and she got an ordinance that made postering illegal, which was such a blow to the culture. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
this this was a big part of the whole scene. And a designer named Art Chantry worked with a club called Mo to produce a newsprint publication where every page, it was oversized, and every page was a poster. And so that gave a platform for the poster artist to keep designing. And I'm almost done with this story. Sorry, but
No, no, no,
and
no, no. This is. Listen, I love this kind of stuff. Like, it brings you back to a time and it's a different side of things. No, I love us. Please keep going.
okay. So I was lucky enough to get to be asked to do some pieces for this publication. And one of the ones that I did, the owner of the club looked at it and he said, "Wow, that is so cool. That ought to be in color." Because, you know, the publication was just cheap newsprint in black and white. And so he connected with a silkscreen printer. And that's how I had my first full color silkscreen poster printed because of this anti postering ordinance. It's a real funny roundabout way.
It's so crazy when I think and I speak to so many, especially artists that came from that early '90s scene, that you're making prints that are going from you know these like on a telephone pole, non-collectible, they're just getting thrown up there, no one thought anything, to where there's those pieces in good condition are selling for hundreds of dollars. If there's, I mean, it's wild because it's historic. It brings us back to a moment in time. It makes that moment live forever. That's what I love about art. It's like, especially concert posters, it's like it brings us back to that moment of in time for that hour or 2 hours or 3 hours of bands on stage. That it's like it's just kind of giving us a glimpse into that moment. And I love it,
Yeah.
but it's so interesting talking to some of these artists and they're like, back then we were just, we were making them because it was just, that's our bread and butter. We're making money. We never thought of it as like, this is going to be framed up on someone's wall.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have to admit, I wasn't making bread and butter. I was making beer. I was I was getting paid in beer and concert tickets. So they didn't even pay me money for those early posters.
Oh,
But it was fun, you know. Then I'd go to the show and I'd see people I knew or meet people and hear great music. Um, it was yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm also aware of, after all these years of doing some of this work, that I realize that I'm really fortunate that certain bands have asked me to design posters for them, because, like Pearl Jam, or the band Phish, they have a huge devoted fan base too. And I'm grateful that the fans like my artwork, but I'm also aware that it's all interconnected with the music. It's the fact that the name of the band is on the picture that I drew, and it relates to a concert that they may or may not have been to, but that it's something that they're attracted to. Um, and so when I've had the chance to be successful with certain posters, I think it's a combination of all those things. It's like the the memories and nostalgia you're talking about that people have for the band and the time period, um, and also my artwork, you know, with some seems to strike them. So I'm grateful I've had these opportunities.
No, it's amazing. You had said that you got paid in beer and concert tickets, and you lived in Seattle, which at that time was the mecca of music. What was the best concert you remember going to living up in Seattle at that time?
I would say probably I saw a lot, but I'd say probably one of my favorites was a concert by Mudhoney.
Mm.
They were to me sort of like one of the quintessential bands of that era, and they had this one, and it was one of the members of the band's birthday. I can't remember what it was, and at some point somebody came out with a gigantic cake and smashed it, and the guy, I think it was the bass player, I can't remember, one of them's faces, and then the cake spilled on the floor, and so everybody was slipping on the icing and falling, and they're having a food fight, and of course people are moshing in front, and the music's going crazy, and that was one of my favorites for sure.
Oh, God, Mudhoney is one of those bands when you look back at especially Seattle and what they did in the early 90s. It's just, it baffles me. They never got the recognition or like the forward pushing like a lot of the bands that came out of Seattle. I mean, you know, Mudhoney. I mean, I absolutely love Mudhoney, and I still like a lot of their newer stuff they're putting in. I just never understood why they never got that like the attention that I think they deserved. It was interesting.
Yeah, I hear you. I feel the same way. I mean, and I really feel like they were very much an authentic band of that scene and
Sure.
of the city. They were really from there and just had a great attitude, a great sound, and I got to know some of them a bit and hung out with Mark Arm a little bit. And that. I had this one really wacky night where we were at the Knitting Factory in New York. The Knitting Factory doesn't even exist anymore, but it was Mark and his wife and my wife and me and Ron Ashton from the Stooges,
Wow.
um, and it was just great. I was kind of like just had a great time. It was really fun. He's a super cool guy, and because they were Mark had been in town filming music for or recording music for Velvet Goldmine, which in that movie Mark was playing sort of the would be Iggy Pop um, type of band versus another band that was kind of the David Bowie band, I believe. Um, so he just happened to be there, and so they were kind of, working in a Stooges style, and I think that's maybe why Ron Ashton was there. But um, it was great. Another time, uh, another funny story. If you don't, should I just throw out stories?
Ward, listen, this is, it's, I love it. Please,
Okay.
please, I love it. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this is a story that with a moral for everybody out there that an old friend of mine told me once, it never hurts to ask. And I took her words to heart, and especially this time. It was the summer of 1995, and I had just left Seattle, my wife and we were going to be moving to New York. But we decided before we got there, we'd go traveling, and we were in Europe. We happened to be in London, and I saw that the Reading Festival was happening. And I looked at the lineup, and it was Neil Young playing with Pearl Jam, basically, on
Hmm.
his Mirror Ball tour. It was the Foo Fighters making their debut with their first album, and Mudhoney was playing. There might have been some other Seattle bands too, but I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like Seattle Central here over in the UK. And so I somehow from England called Seattle. I somehow got the number of the manager of Mudhoney, um, and called him and left a message. I mean, there wasn't even email back then, so I'm not even sure how I made the connection. But I just basically said, "Hey, you guys are in town playing the Reading Festival. I'm from Seattle too," and I explained that I did a lot of work for the Rocket and I did concert posters and stuff. And um,
Which
I
year
said,
was
"I
which year was that Reading Festival?
95.
I'm trying to get the lineup. I'm curious
Oh, okay.
now.
Yeah, and the and I just said I know this is crazy and you may totally say no, but is there any chance you have like a guest pass you could give for me and my wife and my friends I'm visiting in England? And he said yes. And and I'd never even met him before. I mean, they were so nice, you know. And it turned out they were playing the night before in this little club not far from where I was staying. And he said, "Why don't you come meet me there, and I'll give you the passes?" And I said, "Okay." And so I went over there and watched the show. It was just a great small venue show, really really fun. And then afterwards, I was trying to find him, and I saw some guy who was clearly American. I said, "You know, do you know Bob Whitaker? I'm trying to find Bob Whitaker." He's like, "Oh, you want to talk to Bob? Why do you want to talk to Bob?" I said, "Well, I'm supposed to meet him. He was going to maybe give me some passes for a show." He said, "Oh, okay. Well, come with me. You know, I know where he is." And so he starts leading me through this. You know, it's like Spinal Tap through these cavernous hallways underneath the venue. I mean, it wasn't even a very big club, but I was starting to get almost nervous. Like, where are we going? You know, and we finally get way down to the basement or something, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm Bob." Like, oh, okay, you know, well, great to meet you, you know. And he was just like, you know, giving me a hard time, and but yeah, they were so nice. They gave me passes to the festival, and then interestingly enough, you know, I went to this festival. I had a great time, and it was like so much Seattle happening in England that when I got home back to the U.S., I contacted the Rocket in Seattle, and I said, "Hey, there was this great show, and I happened to be here for it. How about if I do an illustrated kind of commentary on what the show was like, seeing all these Seattle bands in England?" And so they said, "Sure, do it." And then they liked what I did so much, it turned into a running comic strip that I did for, that was like, that was 95, and I did the comic strip until 2007. So
Wow.
you never know how things are going to turn out, right? I mean, all because I thought, why don't I ask this guy if he'd give me a free pass to the concert?
Yeah, that listen, I am in the same boat as you. It's just sometimes it's like you ask, things happen, and they all just kind of work out. That lineup, I don't know how I don't even know. Smashing Pumpkins, Green Day, Hole, Beck, Bjork, let's see, Foo Fighters, Neil Young, Soundgarden, Pavement, Mudhoney, Buffalo Tom, White Zombie, Blind Melon, Pennywise. I mean, and that's just to name a few of hundreds of bands that were there. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe Paul Weller played too. I don't know if he's on the list, but
Yes, Paul Weller's on the list.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was I only got passes for one of the days, so I didn't get to see all those bands as great as the lineup sounds, but I
So the
saw
you saw the Neil Young day, right?
yeah.
So Neil
Yeah.
Young, Soundgarden, Pavement, Mudhoney, Buffalo Tom, Babes in Toyland, White Zombie, Blind Melon, NoFX, Pennywise, Monster Magnet, Reef Ash, Guided by Voices. I mean it's and Guided by Voices it is in like the littlest of font on it. It's like the last band. Like, just like at that time it's like, who's Guided by Voices? But now it's like, oh, it's Guided by Voices. That's crazy. But
Yeah.
it's amazing. And and that's a great moral because I do believe in that. Like, don't be scared to do something that you love, or because or don't be scared to ask for something because sometimes that can open doors for you. I think sometimes fear sets in for people that they don't ask, and you can have missed opportunities. And hell, who would have known what would have came if you didn't ask for that pass?
Yeah, it was a lot of serendipity and good fortune. I'm grateful for everybody involved that it all worked out. It was fun.
So that's 95. Now we're getting close to your first Pearl Jam piece.
Yeah. And
Ne-
you know, I gave you those slides. Maybe I should sort of narrate through those slides real quick.
let's do it. Let me get the big font off. Let's get a little bit of font, and I'm gonna remove my ugly mug off the screen, and we're gonna go with a little bit of you in this. Boom.
All right. So when this is backing up a little bit. When I first moved to Seattle in 1991, uh, this is another little lesson: is don't be shot down when you have failure. But I was working at the Twin Cities Reader in Minneapolis before I moved to Seattle, as I mentioned. And when I moved to Seattle, I hoped to work for the Seattle Weekly and, to kind of like parlay what I was already doing over to the Seattle Weekly newspaper. And I set up an interview with the art director. I came in with my portfolio. I was very excited. I, I, I told him, my name's Ward Sutton. I'm here to meet with the art director. And I sat in the waiting room and I kept sitting there and sitting there. And finally somebody came out and said, are you Ward Sutton? I said, yeah. And I said, oh, well, the art director said to tell you that we don't use cartoons, but thanks anyway.
Oh.
And just, I was completely shot down. It was brutal. But and I was new to town, and that was one of my hopes for employment. But anyway, I kept working at it, persevering. This is an illustration I ended up doing for the Seattle Weekly because eventually they decided they wanted to work with me. This was a piece about bootlegging, but the guy in the upper left in the red is a little bit based on Eddie Vedder. So I thought that kind of applied to this string of images. But you can go to the next one now. Somebody who did give me a great opportunity when I moved to Seattle was Art Chantry, who was the art director of the Rocket. And he gave me my first project when I moved to town. This is a later piece that I did. This was actually shortly before I left Seattle. They gave me a cover to do, which was a thrill. But the Rocket, as I say, was all about music, and I started doing a lot of illustrations about music, things like that, and started getting kind of, I think, a name for myself to a certain degree. People could recognize my work. And so go to the next one, please. So I think this was probably 94, the Pearl Jam decided that they were going to throw a free concert for Seattle. And the theme, what they did was they put out a call to radio stations saying, if you want to be the radio station sponsoring our concert, we want you to do a project on the theme of anti-hate, combating hate. And one of the radio stations had this idea of doing murals, and they asked me to do one of the murals. And this is the mural I did, which I wasn't able to go to the concert, sadly, but apparently this was up on stage with the band while they played. And so that was exciting to hear about, and I was just thrilled to do it. It was a lot of fun, and I, of course, really respect the theme that they were working on.
Did you ever get that piece back? Like, was that? Because that's a really beautiful piece. That should be in a museum?
Oh, thank you. It was painted on, I think, like drywall or something, or it was,
oh, wow.
or maybe even something. It was really substantial. It was like a wall, and then they erected it at the concert. And there were some other artists who had done them as well. But no, I never got it back. I'm not sure what happened to it. I hope somebody saved it, but I don't know.
Oh, it's probably in like someone's basement, like like a random corner, just chilling off to the side.
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love it if it were. I hope it survived somehow. But all right, let's go to the next image, please. So so Pearl Jam had done this concert and had this competition for the radio stations based on the theme of anti-hate. Fast forward a little bit of time, and I roll out of bed one morning and look at the newspaper, and there was this group, this right-wing group that was coming to Washington State to try to propose all these terrible bills that would limit the rights of LGBTQ people. And it was this real right-wing thing. They had already been trying to do it in Oregon. And that morning in the newspaper, there was a poll, and it showed that if the vote were held that day, it would pass. And I was so incensed by this. I just sat up and I was like, what can I do to contribute? How can I make it a positive impact on this because this is just horrible, you know.
Sure.
And I just decided, I know what I'll do. I'll make a benefit comic book and I'll raise money for the group that's combating these initiatives. And I sat down, I pulled out a piece of paper, and I made a wish list of all the cartoonists I would love to have contribute to the project. And I just set about doing it. And I just started finding phone numbers for people, calling them, getting people involved. In the end, there were over like 40 different artists uh, and designers involved. Um, and but then I had to get it published. You know, I got everybody to contribute the artwork, and then I had to get the comic book published. So then I decided to have a benefit concert to raise money to publish the comic book to raise money for the cause, and I did a poster for the concert, and uh, and the band Flop, which was you know kind of a they were kind of a hot band at the time in Seattle. They agreed to play the benefit, which was great. Um, and the show was excellent, and we raised money through that. Um, but I still didn't have enough money, and so I wasn't sure. I was like, how am I gonna do this? And I ended up remembering Pearl Jam, and because they had sponsored uh, that competition, that anti-hate competition. So again, it never hurts to ask. I found a way to contact them, and I made a proposal. I said, you know, I need X amount more money just to get this comic book printed. Uh, any chance you would contribute to this project? And they did. They gave me the money I needed to publish the comic, which was great. And then I sold the comic, not just in Seattle, but by mail all over the world, all
Wow.
over the country. And I raised a bunch of money, and thankfully the initiative failed. Um, so so that was nice. It was a vindication that the whole thing collapsed for the right wingers. So that was good. But that also gave me another connection then to Pearl Jam. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think the person that I ended up talking to was Barry Ament, who's the brother of Jeff Ament.
Over
Um,
at Ames, yeah.
yeah. So then we can go to the next slide.
I made this a little bit wider for you.
Okay. So this is, so then I was, you know, kind of in contact with Barry, and I said, hey, you know, I really appreciate what you did. You know, I was trying to say thank you any way I can and love to do more work with you. And he contacted me and said, well, my brother Jeff is doing a side project band called Three Fish. Um, and we'd love to have you illustrate an advertisement for their album. And so they gave me this kind of narrative of a cartoon that was based on sort of a Jesus figure, explaining the name of the band Three Fish. It was a little bit wacky, um, but a lot of fun to do. And so that was a great project. And then that went pretty well. And then we can go to the next slide. And they had me illustrate a T-shirt for the band Three Fish, which you mentioned to me you've got, right?
I do own that T-shirt. Yes.
Wow, that's exciting to hear.
It doesn't fit me.
Okay,
I will blame COVID on it. It's not officially COVID weight, but I will blame COVID on the weight of reason I cannot wear that shirt. But I don't believe I
okay.
fit in that shirt in probably 13 years.
Uh, well, this was another fun one to do. And then, you know, I have to admit, in my head, I was thinking I'm getting closer to Pearl Jam, you know, and so I just got in touch with them, and I said, you know, I'd love to do stuff for the band too, you know, if any project ever came around. And luckily, these next couple things, I actually can't remember the exact sequence that they came about, but you'll see the next slide. Uh, I designed a shirt for Pearl Jam, and this was uh, they had a single out called "Gremmy Out of Control," which was a cover of an old Weirdos song, and they were interested in an image that would kind of be a takeoff on Ed Big Daddy Roth, who I think probably did the artwork for the original Weirdos album or single cover. Um, so I'm a fan of Ed Big Daddy Roth. So that this was a great project. I did a number of variations. This is the one that they chose, and that was really fun. And then that led to the next one, or vice versa, was they asked me to do some stickers for the 10 Club, the Pearl Jam fan club. And so this was uh, doing another variation on the Grammy Out of Control, in this case, driving a Woody like the Beach Boys or something, but in Ed Big Daddy Roth style.
Now this is you made this into a sticker, but was this ever a print? Because this like the image looks like it is a print.
That is just a sticker. I have like a couple of them, and I just took a photo this afternoon to share tonight. So that, as far as I know, it was never printed other than that.
I think I'm not the only person that wishes they had that shirt. That Grammy Out of Control shirt is in high demand. I can see Brad's talking about that. Yet no, the Grammy imagery is classic among. I mean, the hardcore Pearl Jam fans. That is a very legendary image. I know two people have that tattoo of the one from the T-shirt of on the surfing. I'll have to send you if I'm gonna text them and see if I can get the picture. I'll text it to you later. But yeah, no, those are very like Pearl Jam esque. Like they stand out. Like people know what it is.
Wow, man, I'm just blown away whenever I hear somebody has tattooed something I've drawn on them. That's amazing. That's it's
Well,
I'm
well,
very flattered.
dude, you know your artwork. I mean, if you have a lot of your imagery is very classic and it stands out and it's very unique to you. And what I like about it is like Grammy Out of Control is a song that like I said, you have to be a hardcore Pearl Jam fan to know what it is. But in the same sense too, if you know the song, you know the artwork, and there's a connection to it that's like this love connection that meets everything together. And yeah, I really dig it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, they were super fun to do, and it was a nice feeling to be asked to do something for a band like Pearl Jam and feel like the whole concept was totally in my wheelhouse. Like that was the kind of style I loved working in, and it just was a perfect fit. Um, and then there's the next slide. This was based on the song Red Mosquito. Um, uh, so I got to do two stickers. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's another classic image. Like that when you think of Red Mosquito, that image is very much in the same like that it just comes up. So they're very much port in the same sense. That would be God, I would love to have something like that as a print. Like that right there would be like a small little five. Like I don't know, that's just me speaking out of turn, but that is really, amazing.
Oh, thank you. It'd be fun to make them as a print. I'm not sure how widely distributed these stickers were or how much people ever saw them, but they were fun to do. Sure.
I know for a fact, I'm a pretty big collector, but I mean the people that are coming through, if someone has it, or if they've seen it, they'll let me know. I've never seen those stickers before. I've seen the artwork before, but I've never seen them as stickers. So those are that's pretty amazing. I really dig the Red Mosquito ones.
Oh, thanks so much. Um, well, we can go to the next slide. I'm trying to remember
Yep.
what I did. Okay. So, well, then I did a number of Pearl Jam posters after that. After I did the T-shirt and the sticker, then I was really like, I would love to do a poster. I kept trying to very, very, without pestering them, keep planting a bug in their ear. I would love to do posters for you. So I did a number of posters in '96 and '98. Behind me over my shoulder, you can see this Pearl Jam Prague Budapest one. Uh, it's like the 25th anniversary of when I started doing Pearl Jam posters, and when I started doing most of my color posters in general. So I decided to pull a few out of my personal collection because they're sold out otherwise. And I've actually got this one, which is really sort of my most sought after poster, uh, up on eBay right now. It'll be up there for like another week or something. So um, it's kind of hard to part with them because I don't have many of them, and that one is really one of my favorite designs. Uh,
And what's interesting too is you didn't back then artists didn't sign their prints, but you signed this one, which makes it even more collectible in its own sense. Because as a collector of art, to have the ability to have the artist sign it and it's coming from their collection makes it extremely valuable. So in the realm of the Pearl Jam poster collection, I mean, God, this would be something that is, God, light years. This is something this is museum worthy. Brad just posted a link, so for anyone listening, you can click the link here. If you're listening to this on a podcast, it will be on the description. We'll make sure we have the link to the eBay link to go directly to Ward's posting. So if you're interested in bidding on that and buying that piece of museum, what needs to be in a museum, you can put it right in your living room and make sure your wife loves it forever.
Thank you. Thank you. Um, so I got the great opportunity to do a number of posters for the band. That was cool. And then, it stopped, and that's the way freelance work goes. You get
Sure.
opportunities, and then things change. Uh, but but then somebody contacted me through um, uh, that they were going to be doing a benefit concert for the CCFA, the Crohn's Colitis Foundation,
Mm-hmm.
and um, because somebody in the band, I think, is it Stone? I think has colitis. Um,
Mike
uh,
McCready does. Yeah.
Mike McCready. I'm sorry, I had that
No, it's
mixed
okay. I
up.
don't. Yeah.
But and it's actually a cause that's dear to my heart because my brother has colitis and he's
Oh.
suffered from it, and he's done his own. My brother is a musician amongst other great talents, and he has done benefits for the Crohn's Colitis Foundation himself. So when I got asked to do a benefit image for for a CCFA benefit and for Pearl Jam, it was like kind of a win-win. Um, and I just included this slide to show this is sort of the line art that I did, just to give an example of um, how uh, how I would work on these posters. At least back in the day. These days, I'm doing everything digitally. But I'd have to draw on separate layers for the different colors, um, and so that was the black line artwork. Um,
Was it a difficult transition going from an illustration like this to having to translate it to digital as you grew into the digital world?
um, it's an interesting story. Um, I uh, I was doing political cartoons uh, in 2008, and I was very excited about Barack Obama running for president.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, man, I want to be there when he gets the nomination. How could I do that? And so I pitched the idea to the Boston Globe that I'd go as a cartoonist reporter, that I would kind of survey the scene and take things in and then do a cartoon every day about what it was like to be at the convention. Um, and I knew it was going to be too difficult to carry around a scanner and ink and whiteout and paper, and it was just, and brushes. It was just going to be a nightmare. And so I thought, I've got to get a digital tablet and learn how to do this. And I basically bought it and went to the conventions, and it was like a trial by fire. It was stressful, and those early pieces looked pretty rough, but I never looked back after that because it's a great way to work. I'm not using up resources. I'm not wasting paper and ink,
Sure.
and I don't have to buy those things. And um, it means for most of my, that was in 2008. So ever since then, there aren't many original drawings on paper of mine anymore. Um, but it's a great way to work.
No,
So
that's pretty awesome. It's just it because I look at that and it's just the finesse behind that is always impressive. Like what it takes to do that, and you can see the work put into it. And just interesting because most of the artists I talk to nowadays, they don't do that. There's not much hand drawn. It's everything's digital now, so it's like almost like it's a dying art in its own sense, where the younger generation is not necessarily doing that, which is it's fine. I get it. I just love seeing that physical medium. I don't know. I'm a physical medium kind of guy.
yeah, there's definitely something very cool about it for sure. Um, if we go to the next slide, uh, so then I also got asked to design a T-shirt for the CCFA, and
Okay.
that was uh, going to be given away at the benefit that Pearl Jam was playing at. Um, so I'm just kind of showing how it all has interconnected, and one thing that I think is great about Pearl Jam from the beginning of my story of working with them all the way up to this point, is that they are people who are kind of true to their values, and they believe in causes and helping people and doing positive things, and that's one thing that really makes me enjoy getting to do work with them.
100%.
Yeah. So now the last slides are just kind of this was a display that was in the SeaTac airport, um, and I actually never even saw it in person. But I was living in Costa Rica at the time that this came up, and uh, but I was just thrilled to hear about it. And then people kept texting me and emailing me photos like, "Wow, I saw your display in the airport," and um, so that was, there was a broader display of the art of Pearl Jam in general, but they gave me my own section, which I was really honored by. And and, and then the next few slides are from the
Before we jump slides, that
oh
one Pearl Jam print at the top, the man coming out of the head of, and I know there's different color variations of that, if I remember correctly. Um,
yes.
that to me is probably going to be go down as probably one of the top five greatest Pearl Jam prints ever done because it's so to me. Now this is just my opinion, but I really believe like there's something like there's a couple of prints that really stand out in different like eras of Pearl Jam, and that one right there is very much like I don't know. There's something very special about that one.
Wow, thank you. Yeah. I mean, that was an interesting one because there were two concerts. There was the one at Randall's Island in New York, and
Hmm.
I believe that was the one I was originally that was the original one. Um, but then they called and said, "We've got another concert in Seattle, but we want to just use the same image, and we'll change and why don't you change the color and redo the listing of the supporting acts and the venue and the date and everything." And so I was a little disappointed because I was like, I've got the chance to do two posters, but I can only do one design and reuse it. I mean, I didn't want to waste an opportunity to do a whole new poster, but the time was so short. That's what they really needed to do. And it was fun to see a poster in two versions with different variations of color. But thanks for your kind words. It means a lot. I'm
I
glad you
think
like
you're
it.
one of only three Pearl Jam prints out of all hundreds of shows they've done that I actually did different color variations for that were sold at the shows. Like the image was just a different color. I mean, they have like now they'll do like a different a different version completely that is not sold at the shows, but at the shows like I know Phoenix, Arizona, they had like a white and red version of something. Yours, they had the Seattle and New York one, and if I remember correctly, and I could be wrong, and I'll probably get yelled at here in a minute from everyone tuning in that's commenting on this about did you forget about this one? But I feel like there was one in Florida at a festival. I don't know, but I could be wrong. But anyway, but let's go to the next slide because this is where you start with the Mopop, which is I was there. It's amazing. I've been to a lot of
Yeah.
museums, and nothing will ever top this experience. This was something straight out of nerd history for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was there in January of 2019, and I was thrilled to see that my work was included in the show. It's like a very comprehensive exhibit on the history of Pearl Jam, and it was really fun to be included in it. So I guess there's a few more slides here, but just kind of show some of my pieces in context of the greater exhibit. That was a piece, by the way. That one is a sequel of sorts to the one behind me, um, where they were kind of experimenting with um, having designers collaborate instead of having a single artist do a drawing, have artists collaborate. So I did that one with Ames Bros. Um, and yeah, so
And that
that's
was
you can see a little bit of similarity because it's in Prague again, like the first one.
yeah, same. I mean,
And
because it's right over your shoulder, same color scheme, kind of that McDonald's, and like yeah, no, totally, I can totally see it. And the crazy thing is, I don't know why I never realized that until just now.
yeah, my
Uh,
whole idea with the original poster was I was really interested in. I'd seen some exhibits in New York on on Russian design, Russian poster, Soviet poster design style, and I was just blown away by it. And when I got asked to do this poster for Pearl Jam, that was going to be in Prague and Budapest, and I'd actually traveled to Prague and Budapest in 1990, and it was just an incredible experience. So I was doubly thrilled to do a poster for this place I'd been to and really loved visiting. Um, but I was just thinking of how in the Soviet era it was all about the workers, working for the cause, and that now with uh, things changing in Eastern Europe, it was all about the consumers, and so these formerly dutiful workers are now transformed into consumers, eating their Big Mac and fries and Coke, and there's the guy with the let's see, let me see it. Yeah, the guy holding a spatula like he's just cooked burgers for everybody. And, but the Ames Bros guys like that, and so when they approached me about this second one, they said, "Well, why don't we kind of do a sequel of that um, and play off that again somehow?" And so it was fun to revisit it. Unfortunately, originally in my design, there was more of the clown really looked like Ronald McDonald, but I guess that wasn't going to pass muster in terms of worrying about lawsuits and things. So it got changed into more of like a crazy clown. But
You can tell what it is if you're, yeah, you get the idea. No, it's awesome. I really dig it. That's a cool one. And then your next slide kind of shows in the sequence of you with a bunch of class. That's at Mopop as well.
yep, yep, yeah. And there's been so much amazing work created around the band. It's awesome that the band supports artists in this way. Like that they want to create visual art around their events, and it's really
100%.
cool.
Well, I mean, and it is rare, the support. I mean, and listen, there's a lot of bands out there, and I don't follow everything, but it's rare that a band will support the other arts in retrospect that are around Pearl Jam to consistently grow them and kind of involve them in what they're doing. Um, you know, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's get through these last two slides because I'm curious about it. But you had that one, then you have this one, which is from Mopop as well.
Yeah, and there's another my poster in the bottom right there. That was my Minneapolis show poster. Um, that was a fun one to do because Minneapolis is my hometown, so I was enjoyed that.
Nice. It is. That was. I dug that. That's the first time on the show we've done like a visual tour per se of things. So I really dug the ability to kind of get a visualization of what was being talked about. A couple of things where questions are popping up. And I'm gonna ask these from people that are viewing in. One person was asking, "Are you surprised at how the value of your prints have kind of increased or are so valuable now than?" Because when prints first come out, they're $25 to $40 depending on the era. So now, I mean, many of your prints are very much in the high end spectrum of ownership.
Yeah, I sold a copy of that Pearl Jam from Minneapolis recently, and I was basically blown away by. I didn't know what to charge. I don't follow all the market for it that well or
Sure.
anything, but it felt like a good time to sell one, and because I had been getting inquiries from people, and I didn't even know how. I had so many people asking me about it, and it's weird the way these things come. I don't know what prompts it, but I might get a wave of people saying, "Oh, do you have a Minneapolis poster?" And I really had like one, that I wasn't going to sell, but I decided, well, so many people want one, and I thought, well, I might as well put it on eBay. And then, yeah, I was shell shocked. I couldn't believe what it went for, I've been somewhat aware of the fact that people will sell some of my work on eBay and get a lot of money for it, flippers or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and that's just part of the world. But so, for once I sold one and I got a lot of money. It was kind of like crazy.
That's how the
But
world turns.
yeah, but the person who got it is very excited, and so I guess it's all good all the way around.
Now, Ward, you have done a lot in your career when it comes to the work with musical posters, concert posters, your work in many publications, and also you've had things that have been shown on HBO and some other and in cinematographically ways. You know, a lot of people, artists in general, would dream to have a tenth of what you've been able to accomplish. But I mean, I know that artists are always trying to get to that next thing. And I'm curious, what is there like a dream piece or something that is like in that you're like hoping to get to?
Well, one of my all-time goals is to do a cover for the New Yorker magazine. So that's something I've pitched ideas quite a bit, um, and never quite made it. I started doing cartoons for them in, I think I had my first one published in 2007, and but that's a whole different process doing the cartoons. I've been fortunate to do a lot of work cartooning wise with them, and I love doing that. Um, After 25 years of trying to do an illustration for the magazine, not even the cover, but the interior, I got hired a year ago, and uh, it literally was 25 years since I arrived in New York and started talking to the very same art director. And I don't even know what prompted it, but she called me and hired me, and I did a full page illustration for
Wow.
them. And again, it's like perseverance. You just don't give up and hope someday it's going to work out. So doing a cover is one of my all-time goals, and I don't, I would love to do it. I don't know if I'll get a chance or not, but
Well, listen, the way that your life has gone and the way that your doors and have opened and opportunities have come your way, I don't doubt that's going to happen. And we'll be sending positive vibes your way for that. Now, the one thing that it was interesting, I didn't know this until I'd asked you right before we did the show was, I I've been collecting Mad magazines since I was in elementary school. Like I love Mad magazine. I just love the novelty of it, the obscurity of it. I love the imagery. Like I've always dreamt of having like me drawn as like the man, like in Spy versus Spy, or like in one of those images. Like there's always just that kind of like feel of like, I don't know, there's something special about it. Excuse me as I'm spitting everywhere. But I said, your work looks like it could be in Mad Magazine. You're like, I've actually worked in Mad Magazine, which like the same thing happened with Justin Hampton. I had no, or Ben Brown, like these people that were telling. I'm like, I had no idea that these artists had worked in it. Um, you know, can you tell me a little bit about like your experience with Mad Magazine? Because I'm kind of curious about that.
oh, well, one of the first things I have to say is that the people who worked at Mad Magazine were some of the nicest people I've ever worked with. I mean, they're such good people. Sometimes in life you get to meet like your idols or something, and they turn out to be a jerk, and it's such so disappointing. And this was a case where I was obviously a fan of Mad growing up, and then to get to work for them was such a thrill. And on top of it, they were just so cool. They really were invested in what they were doing. They believed they really got it, and they took it very seriously in their own hilarious way. They knew what fit Mad and what didn't. They were um, there was no wishy-washiness there. They really knew it. And Sam Viviano was the art director. He'd been there for 30 some years, and uh, yeah, just going into the office was always fun. It was always fun to see those guys. Most of my work, I'm not interacting with people in person, but they're one of the few people who, in this day and age, would want to call you up and talk to you on the phone when they'd hire you for a job, as opposed to just sending you an email. And there's just something really kind of charming about that. It's a little bit old school. Um, and they gave me a certain amount of leeway. It was a chance to draw things in a real wacky way, as you can
Hmm.
imagine.
Sure, sure, sure.
One of the things I forgot to mention this earlier, you were talking about being a fan of DC Comics, and I'm not sure. Are you still into comics now, or is it like you
Yeah,
used to
so
be?
not nearly as much, but there is like this. So they had the Rebirth series come out over the last 4 years, where they kind of went back and they started from scratch in some of the series. And there's a couple of them that I wanted to go back and read, like, like some of the obscure ones that were offset, like Blue Beetle and, like the Harley Quinn series and stuff. So I dug those really a lot. I'm a big Batman fan. So I don't collect it nearly as much as I used to when I was younger, but I still do. I still dig deep into that. And then the whole Watchmen series, that's probably one of the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest comic series ever was the Watchmen series.
Cool, cool. Well, I was really excited, having grown up collecting comics and been a fan of comics, that Mad Magazine in what year would have been, maybe like 2012 or something, I can't remember exactly, but they decided to do, because DC owns Mad, they decided to do a whole run of variant covers for April Fool's Day of all their titles. And they got Mad Magazine artists to do the covers. And so I got hired to do a cover for Teen Titans, which was a total thrill because, I'd grown up reading Teen Titans some, and it was, I was able just to put that kind of Mad Magazine spin on it. So what I did is I had all the Teen Titans acting like actual teens, and they're all like Wonder Girl's taking a selfie, and some, I think Robin is playing or watching YouTube. They're all doing things that Kid Flash is like texting.
I'm pulling it up. I love this. Yeah, they're like holding their cell phones on tablets, and like the monsters are behind them, like destroying the planet. And then that's great.
And they can't be bothered because they're real teens. They're just like, self-involved. That was really, really a fun project to do.
That's great.
And then the next year I did another one. It was like a Green Lantern one. I like the Teen Titans one the best, but it was fun to do that as well. The Green Lantern one, I actually turned Larfreeze, who's like a bad guy in Green Lantern comics, into Alfred E. Newman. And so to actually get to draw an Alfred variant like that, like a Mad cover, was a lot of fun. I would have loved to have done a Mad magazine cover, but I never got the chance to do that one. They usually look for more of like a painterly style artist to do the covers anyway. But
well, maybe you never know. Maybe they're listening. Maybe that'll be the next thing. You'll get a ring tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
But listen, I will say this, Ward. I think that the one great thing about your work, like I said, and I'll say this numerous times again, is I've always appreciated that it's non-filtered. I always believe that the work coming out is true to you. I feel like you're not getting, I just appreciate the work you're doing, because even though some of it's hilarious and funny, some of it's very serious, and it makes an impactful meaning to a lot of us that want to say things, but we have we have you putting it out there for us. So I appreciate that. And your work that you've done with, Pearl Jam in general, just because, and I'm not just saying that because of Pearl Jam on the show, but I mean, you've been a part of so many great pieces with Pearl Jam. And the story with Three Fish, which I had no idea about until this episode, is it's clever. I like how that whole tie-in worked out. But Ward, listen, I can't thank you enough for everything. Someone is typing me a good question. It's a Mad related question. Who is your favorite Mad magazine artist?
Wow. Well, boy, it's hard to choose one, because I'm such a fan from even back in the beginning with Harvey Kurtzman and Will Elder and people like that, and Wally Wood, all the way up to classic Mort Drucker, and then Tom Richmond, I think, is great these days. And there's some other modern guys and gals who I just think are great. I'd be hard pressed to pick a single one, I guess. I'd have to say Mort Drucker is probably the classic. So I always loved looking at his movie parodies and his caricatures. Those were pretty great. But
he was really a staple for Mad Magazine that when you were opening the magazine, you knew that's what you were going to get. That was going to be a part of it. It's interesting as I'm looking down some of the notes I written down. I don't think I've even touched a tenth of what I had written down here, which is genius because, we've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes, I've literally learned a ton. Firstly, the Seattle story is amazing. Someone said something great a little while ago about that, how it's crazy that a woman who hated handbills on the telephone poles kind of helped change rock and roll history in its own sense, and that was something I never knew. But yeah, your stories are amazing because. And listen, I don't want to keep you all night too. I mean, we all have families, we all have lives, but we're definitely gonna. I mean, God, I have a million more questions, but we might have to do in a few months do round two with you because yeah, I mean, we haven't even got to a ton. But I don't. we
Sure.
no, but this is great. But listen, man, is there anything that we should be looking forward to coming out soon? Is there anything you're working on right now that should be keeping an eye out for?
Um, I should have, this is the one question I should have been totally prepared for. I have a piece, I have a piece that's coming out in the New York Times Book Review in April that I think will be pretty fun. It's like the back page, it'll be a full page comic. Um, I'm working on another piece for the Boston Globe, uh, and that's probably going to come out in about a week or something. Um, but yeah, my one of the things that I really like about the way I work is that I like to do fast things that um, I create and get out there, and then I move on to the next one. And I like working freelance because I don't get in a rut. I'm always doing something different. This week I might be doing an illustration for somebody. Next week I might do a poster design. The week after that I would do a cartoon. A lot of my work is cartooning these days, but I do different kinds of cartoon. Like I'll pitch single panel cartoons, kind of typical New Yorker cartoons to them, or I'll write a script for a multi-panel cartoon and pitch it at various places. Uh, so that's a long way of saying, there'll be more stuff coming. I don't always know until I usually work in a pretty quick turnaround, but um, I have some hopeful, fun things coming on the horizon too. We'll see what happens. I'm also been interested in putting out some limited edition prints of my work, and so I'm kind of hoping to do a little more of that too for people who are interested.
I'm gonna need the Gen X print. I need that. That was one of my favorite pieces you've done. That just kind of touched a soft spot with what is going on in this world. I'm like, that is my dad. That is in that photo, and I'm like, that just needs to be centered right in the house. No, I loved it. Listen, if you're listening or if you're watching, you can listen. If you want to learn more about Ward, you can definitely go to SuttonImpactStudios.com. You can also find Ward Sutton on Facebook and all of the social media platforms, Instagram, and you can follow along as he posts his artwork weekly, daily. He's very much involved on the social media platform, so definitely check him out there. And also, he has some pieces if you're into the rarer art pieces and you want to do something that belongs in a museum but you want it in your home. Check out his eBay listing. It is attached to both a description on the podcast version and the video version. If you're listening to the show or watching it and you're halfway through and you didn't watch the whole thing, this show will be in its full entirety on the Touring Fan Live Facebook page directly after the show is over. And tomorrow morning, this will be on a podcast version across all major podcast platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Google, Deezer, and everywhere else you follow through. We have another show coming up on Friday. That'd be another Rob and Anthony's World Tour. And then also stay tuned because April 1st this year, the Touring Fan Live is going to be announcing probably the biggest announcement of something I've been working on for about 9 months, which I'm really excited to share. So stay tuned for April 1st as big announcement comes through. But Ward, brother, hang tight. We're going to end this show. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to put you back in the green room while we close this up. But thank you so much for coming on. Any final words for the audience listening at home?
Thank you, Anthony. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, and thanks for having me on the show. And thank you to everybody listening.
Alrighty. Well, until next time, I'm Anthony, that's Ward, and you've tuned in to the Touring Fan Live.